They told me I'd never be more than a boy from Mississippi with a quiet voice and dark skin. But now people pay to hear that voice. Funny how life turns. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, but the streets that raised me, Greenwood, Mississippi, a place that looked like time had forgotten it. And maybe it had. We were surrounded by cotton fields and silence, the kind of silence that only broke for church bells or sirens. I was a skinny boy with a quiet voice and a wide imagination. Folks used to say I was too soft for the South, that I had the kind of face that would get me into trouble, not out of it. But it wasn't my face that got me into trouble. It was my skin. I was 8 when I first saw a man lynched. Mama told me not to look, but how do you not look at something the whole town came out to see? His name was Elijah. He sold fish from a cart, sang like Nat King Cole, and once gave me a nickel when I was crying outside the general store. They said he whistled at a white woman. I knew he didn't. Everyone knew. But lies had more power than truth back then. Mama squeezed my hand so hard I thought it might break. "Remember this," she whispered, "not because it's right, but because it's real." That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and listened to crickets and silence. That's when I first decided I'd leave Greenwood. I didn't know where or when, but I knew I wouldn't die there. In school, I wasn't the loudest kid. I read more than I spoke. Teachers said I was polite, which I later learned was code for don't challenge the order. One day, I got up to read a Langston Hughes poem during literature class. The room fell silent. My voice, deep, calm, clear, filled that space like something sacred. For the first time, they listened, even the teacher. But the next day, that same teacher pulled me aside. "Maybe stick to Booker T. Washington next time," she said. "Langston's too forward." I didn't understand then, but I felt the weight of it. She meant Langston was too black, too honest, too much like me. That night, I read Let America Be America again under my blanket by flashlight, and I swore to myself, if they were scared of my voice, then my voice had power. When I turned 16, I boarded a Greyhound bus bound for Chicago. My mama packed me a small bag, gave me a hug so tight it felt like home itself didn't want to let go. "Don't forget who you are, Morgan," she said. On the bus, I sat in the back. Old habits. A white man looked back at me once, then twice. I didn't meet his gaze. In Mississippi, that could cost you your life. In Chicago, the air smelled different, fast, loud, unforgiving, but it didn't carry the same weight of fear. It was the first time I breathed freely in years. I didn't know it then, but I was walking into a new kind of storm. I found a job cleaning floors at a local theater. The Apollo wasn't hiring, but a small black-owned house called The Starlet was. I swept cigarette butts and scrubbed gum off velvet seats. One night, an actor didn't show. The director stormed out, flailing his arms. "We need someone to read this line," he shouted. I raised my hand. "Kid, you clean floors," he said. "I also read Langston Hughes." Silence. He tossed me a script. I read. My voice filled the room again. He blinked. "Damn," he muttered. "You're not just a janitor." That was the first time someone saw more in me than just skin. Opportunity came slow. For every one audition I got, I was turned away 5 times. Too dark, too serious, not what we're looking for. One director leaned in and whispered, "You know, if you lightened your skin a bit, you might get more work." I left without saying a word. Outside, I lit a cigarette and let the smoke burn into my lungs. Not from addiction, from rage. And the reminder, the world didn't want me to be me. They wanted me to be less. It was 1968. Martin was gone. So was Malcolm. Harlem was burning. I stood on 125th Street, watching brothers throw bricks through windows, sisters screaming, cops with helmets and batons. And me? I just stood there. "Do something," a man yelled at me. "You just gonna stand there in your fancy coat?" "I've been doing something," I said. "I've been telling our stories." He laughed. "Stories don't change nothing." But they do. Stories build memory, and memory builds identity, and identity is revolution. I walked away slowly, past broken glass and smoke. I carried that fire with me, just not in my fists, in my voice. When I finally got to Hollywood, I was already tired, but I wasn't done. They said, "Play the driver." I said, "I'll play him, but I won't make him small." They said, "Play the prisoner." I said, "Then let him speak with wisdom." Role after role, I put dignity where they expected silence, depth where they wanted caricature. They thought they could box me in, but I made the box disappear. When I was nominated, I smiled. When I won, I didn't cry. But that night, back in my hotel room, I stared at the golden statue and thought of Elijah, the man they hung when I was 8. He would never see a stage, never hold a mic, never breathe again. I placed the Oscar on the shelf and whispered, "This is yours too." Because no award erases what we lost, but it honors that we lived. Years later, I was at a reading in Atlanta. A young man in a hoodie waited for me outside. "Mr. Freeman," he said, "you once read a Langston Hughes poem." I nodded. "I'm studying voice acting because of you." I smiled. He said, "I'm from Greenwood." I froze. He laughed nervously. "You ever hear of it?" I was born there. We shook hands. His grip was strong. And in that moment, the cycle broke. The story wasn't just mine anymore. It had passed on. People ask me what it takes to survive. I tell them memory. Remember where you came from. Remember who they said you couldn't be. And remember who you chose to become. I walk a little slower now, but my voice, still strong, still deep, still mine. I'm Morgan Freeman, and I still remember. If this story touched you, let me know where you're listening from in the comments below. Are you from Mississippi, Chicago, New York, or somewhere else that still remembers? And if you believe stories like this matter, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for the next one. We've got more to tell.